LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Kamala, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon, right?
LGB. This means let's go, Brandon. No. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon, I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing that back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB. Let's go, Brandon. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I
Forgot
this message.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this January 8th, 2024 at 1:04 p.m. Central Standard Time. One feature for you today, Joe Lange on Badlands Media, Illusions of Democracy. But before we get to that, don't forget, go to angelpaste.com to get vanilla angel paste and, well, do it right now. What we had happen, we had a small batch that Barbara made, and she puts 17 drops of vanilla essential oil in addition to the delicious scent. It also has antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. It's amazing. Gorgeous scent to it. And it's a vanilla essential oil. Nothing synthetic about it. But what happened was they sold out too quickly. I mean, it was disgusting. So I quickly increased the inventory to make it so that it wouldn't turn people away. We won't be getting more vanilla angel paste until Thursday, but we'll be shipping out immediately then. And that really will be the last of the vanilla. So don't forget to go to www.angelpaste.com to get the best lotion the world has ever known for a very limited additional time. There's going to be vanilla angel paste on there. For those of you who want to show that you watch Reading Epic Threads, you can use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. If you get 3 or more bottles, you get free shipping. Angel paste, now in vanilla. Your skin will drink it up. All right, let's do the piece from the brilliant Joe Lange. From badlands.substack.com, Illusions of Democracy, Reclaiming What is Rightfully Ours, by Joe Lange. In my previous piece, link in the article, I talked about how the government is the problem and not the solution. I've been revealing in this series of articles how a shadow government has been set up by George H.W. Bush to control the entire executive branch, including the presidency. This corrupt shadow government used free trade as the excuse to increase drug trafficking across the southern border and deregulation of the banking system to rob the treasury and launder money through the savings and loan crisis. Those are two huge examples of how bad a government can be when it is completely corrupt and controlled by a cabal of elites. But for 4 years, we saw a glimpse of what a good government could look like. Even while battling against a shadow government that was embedded within his own administration, Donald Trump did a government reset and made huge strides in turning the ship around and focusing the government once again on serving the people. Trump showed the American people a huge contrast between what the government has been and what it could be. That was just a taste of what's to come. We are always going to have a government. What that government looks like is the real question. Are we going to have a government that rules the people or serves the people? I believe Trump and our military are executing a plan that will give the government back to the people and restore the Constitution. I think that ball is already in motion and a done deal. Everything is being timed, and our government is going to be transformed. But here's the big question. Once you've restored a constitutional government, how do you ensure that the people maintain control of their government long after Trump is gone? How do you protect the American people's constitutional rights for many generations? I've said for a long time that the keystone is money. Q often told us to follow the money. Why? Because the enemy has been stealing our money for a very long time, and money buys power. A portion of Q drop number 2807, topic taxpayer theft, insider versus outsider, retain control versus lose control. Kennedy was an outsider, assassinated. Reagan was an outsider, assassination attempt. POTUS is an outsider, class high, CLAS. End quote. Taxpayer theft. It has always been about the insiders versus the outsiders. The insiders are stealing the taxpayers' money and have been protected by a two-tier justice system set up by a shadow government. This corrupt system has been operating for many generations. Trump is an outsider and is doing everything he can to completely transform our system of government and restore the Constitution. It's always been about one thing: control. Who has control? Is it the people or is it the government? Our government has been controlled for a long time, but not by the people. A global cabal of elites controlled our government, and our politicians were their personal puppets. How? Here are two Q drops explaining it. Q drop number 263 of December 5th, 2017. Fly, Roths, fly, with pluses on each side. Q drop number 275 of December 5th, 2017. Plus, fly, plus. Banks control governments. Governments control people. SA controls elected people. Soros controls organizations of people. Ready to play? Q. Plus fly plus is referring to the Rothschilds family, who have controlled the global banking system for many generations, going back to the Napoleonic Wars. Q mentioned that the Rothschilds controlled the banks, which then allows them to control governments because they control their economies. They then use those governments to control the people. Prince Al-Walid controlled many of the key politicians in our government. I will begin to make that case in the coming articles. Soros controlled the political organizations like Antifa and BLM that our corrupt government continuously fed taxpayer money into in order to prop them up. That Q post is a snapshot of where the real control was before Trump became president. We were a long way from the founding principles of this country. It was never meant to be this way. It's supposed to be a government by the people and for the people. The government's job is to serve the people and to protect their constitutional rights. So, how do you give the power back to the people? You have to place them above the government and the banks that control them. The people must have power over both. But here's the bigger question. How do you ensure that the power stays with the people long into the future? I believe Trump is a great 5D chess master because he's looking at things far into the future. He's trying to restore the Constitution and our founding principles and prevent another insurgency long after he's gone. There's one thing you have to do if you want to preserve the rights of the American people far into the future. What is it? The answer is mentioned right in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. End quote. Don't miss that last important part. It's the key to the future, to provide new guards for their future security. What's the key to our future? Safeguards. I believe Trump's plan involves putting in place many safeguards in order to protect the power of the people and the Constitution, to prevent another government that is controlled by banks. We are going to need to transform the banking system and install many safeguards to prevent banks from being corrupted. Why is this so important? Banks are always going to exist, just like governments. Banks play an important role in society. They allow funding for businesses and projects that would otherwise never get started. But what those banks look like is the real question. Who controls them and has power over the banking system is what's important. Right now, the entire banking system is centralized. That is how a corrupt cabal of elites have been able to control the entire system. The entire banking system needs to be decentralized. I believe the global banking system is being bankrupted, and a new system is being built by the BRICS Plus nations who are allied with Trump. I wrote about that in these 3 previous articles: Master and Commander, the Master Builder, and Shared Interests. Those 3 articles gave my opinion on what's happening on a global scale to replace this debt slavery system controlled by banks and to help prevent another one in the future. But how are we going to change things in America? How do you fix the broken and corrupt banking system in America for the future? The banks are controlling the entire financial system. This is part of Q drop number 2807. Quote, who controls the distribution of funds? Who accounts for the funds? Who has access to the funds? Who really has access to the funds? Do funds return in the form of political donations? Do funds return in the form of massive donations to foundations and or institutes? Do funds return in the form of offshore bank accounts for future payments / payoffs? Replicate, environment, green, aid, assist, etc. No honest control in place, no checks and balances in place, no safeguards in place. Threat of an outsider becoming president, loss of control.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another 4-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented, and the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefits of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.
Trillions of dollars at stake, controlled by a group of special interests, illusion of democracy. Welcome to the real world. We cannot afford to lose this rare opportunity to right the wrongs. We, the people, must reclaim what is rightfully ours. We must rise. We must fight. God bless the United States of America. Q. The real world today is an illusion of democracy. The United States of America was founded as a constitutional republic, and the people were given all the power. The people are supposed to be in control. It's all about reclaiming what is rightfully ours. Trump and our military are going to hand back control to the American people. It will be up to us, after that, to take responsibility and maintain control. That is why Trump says that together we are going to save this country. Don't miss these two very important questions in that Q drop. Who accounts for the funds and who has access to the funds? We need a new, open, and honest banking system, a system where the people's personal savings are protected. There are no safeguards or checks and balances in place to protect the rights of the people today. That's what Trump is going to change. Trump was the outsider the enemy feared. They know they have lost control of things and can do nothing to stop what is coming. But what's coming? The key to our future is giving the people control and setting safeguards in place to prevent banks from controlling our government ever again. The entire banking system has been centralized in a way to victimize constantly the American people. We are trapped in a system where our money does not belong to us. It's a debt instrument that we pay interest on continuously as it is purposely devalued every year by a system that creates inflation by printing more debt. The IRS was created to collect those debt payments from the American people. I don't believe the IRS will even exist when we win this war. The banking system is set up to prey on the most vulnerable and to reward the favored class. They are constantly charging us fees for the use of what's supposed to be our own money. Those fees keep going up, and new ones are constantly created to drain the American people's personal savings. Savings accounts are a huge part of this future plan. The American people having control of a savings account as a safety net is a vital safeguard that must be put in place and protected. The government must be prevented from stealing the American people's savings through inflation and taxation. I believe that's exactly what's coming. Our savings rate is dropping drastically in this high inflation environment that we are currently living in. People are draining their savings and taking on more debt just to survive. They are using their savings to pay for bills and food. All of this gives more power to the government, which is controlled by the cabal. It's a debt trap that we have all been victims of for many generations. What's the answer? What safeguards can prevent this victimization in the future? Q often said, future proves past. I believe I've found a story from the past with an example of some great safeguards, and I also evidence that Trump is already setting up similar safeguards for our future behind the scenes that I think everyone is missing. In this article, I'd like to focus on the story from the past, which sets an example for the world of how to prevent banking control of our governments. My next article will reveal what I believe is the plan to safeguard our future here in America. Do you remember my article, School of Assassins and Dictators, where I described how George H.W. Bush and the CIA were installing dictators throughout Central and South America? They were training their militaries at the School of the Americas to terrorize and murder their own people so they could maintain control of the governments. In that article, I mentioned one country that stood out from the rest. Unlike the other Central American countries that the CIA controlled, this country wasn't ruled by a dictator or brutalized by its own government. It is still considered one of the happiest places on earth by its citizens. It is a republic, similar to the United States. That nation is the Republic of Costa Rica. It ranks near the top in the world on the happiness index of populations. The people of Costa Rica are considered some of the happiest people in the world for several reasons, and their government doesn't resemble any of the other Central American countries around them that have suffered under dictators, oppression, and rampant poverty. Why? Safeguards. Costa Rica has a very interesting history, and it's mostly because of one man. It's someone nobody knows about except the people of Costa Rica, who regard him as a hero, much the way we now view Donald Trump. While all the countries in Central and South America were being devastated by our own CIA/shadow government, Costa Rica was protected by safeguards set up by this one man. I think he deserves credit as maybe one of the great leaders in modern history, and nobody knows his name. Who is he? Jose Pepe Figueres Ferrer. According to the New York Times, quote, if Costa Rica has eluded the familiar afflictions of Central America, war, poverty, and repression, much of the credit belongs to Jose Figueres Ferrer, a fighter for democracy who died recently at the age of 83. It was he who took the bold step of dissolving Costa Rica's army nearly 40 years ago. He later remarked with justifiable pride that such reforms gave Costa Rica, quote, a deeper and more human revolution than that of Cuba. That it was. Costa Rica has shown by example how a farewell to arms can make practical as well as moral sense. A planter who studied engineering at MIT, Mr. Figueres, plunged into politics in 1948 to challenge a coup carried out by the army in alliance with communist-led guerrillas. Mr. Figueres, leading an irregular force of 700, prevailed over them and then went on to head the provisional junta that ruled for 18 months. It put into effect basic welfare legislation, promoted education, nationalized banks, and disbanded the armed forces. Then it stepped down. And ever since, Costa Ricans have settled their arguments constitutionally. End quote. Jose Pepe Figueres led a 700-member revolutionary force to take back control of their government. It was a civil war that lasted only 44 days. But what led to the civil war? They had an election, and the incumbent, who was controlled by the cabal, lost the election. Instead of conceding, the cabal puppet directed the legislature that was controlled by his political party to annul the election so that he could stay in power. That caused an uprising by the people led by Jose Pepe Figueres. After defeating the military and removing the fraudulent government, he became the leader of the provisional government for 18 months and then handed power back to the president who had been elected by the people. That is something that rarely ever happens. Handing power back to the people is something that should be celebrated in history rather than hidden. The people of Costa Rica haven't forgotten, and the legislature that represents the people then honored him. According to culturacr.net, quote, the legislative plenary approved in the first debate the Bill 22.289, which declares the former president of the Republic, Jose Figueres Ferrer, hero of peace. The project was approved in a convenient way just 2 months after these same deputies eliminated the title of traitor of the homeland that weighed on former President Rafael Ángel Calderón Fournier. Only deputies Jose Maria Villalta of the Frente Amplio and Paola Vega of the PAC voted against. End quote. Jose Pepe Figueres is viewed very similarly to how a lot of Americans view George Washington. He was also an outsider, just like Trump, who cared more about the people than he cared about power. But before he handed power back, he installed several safeguards that would protect the people's rights and prevent another dictator from taking power. These safeguards are a model for the future and have stood the test of time even under constant assault by the global cabal. I believe many countries may adopt these same safeguards once the global cabal are removed. What are some of these safeguards? He disbanded the armed forces. That removed a centralized force that could be used by the cabal to take control away from the people. The government would later write that safeguard into the Constitution. I believe that is a big reason the CIA shadow government has not been able to install a dictator there. Jose Pepe Figueres was against dictators and also against the CIA. More from the previous New York Times article, quote, "During his 3 terms as elected president, nobody was in doubt about the views of Don Pepe, as everybody called him. He bitterly opposed the Somoza regime in Nicaragua, yet also broke with Fidel Castro when the Cuban Revolution lurched leftward. He supported John F. Kennedy's Alliance for Progress, but not the CIA's clandestine wars with Cuba," end quote. Don Pepe supported JFK, but not the CIA's clandestine operations. Why? Because he saw firsthand how much the CIA devastated the countries in Central America. During the 18 months that Jose Pepe Figueres led the provisional government, he oversaw the election of a new constitutional assembly, who then adopted a new constitution to protect the people's rights. They placed many safeguards into their new constitution, safeguards that have prevented Costa Rica from being controlled by the cabal, unlike all of its Central American neighbors. Some of those safeguards included how the government would be elected and limited their time in office. They made it harder for politicians to stay in power, which kept control of the government in the people's hands. According to Freedom House, the president is directly elected for a 4-year term and can seek a non-consecutive second term. Presidential candidates must win 40% of the vote to avoid a runoff. End quote. When Jose Pepe Figueres handed power back to the duly elected president, he then ran for president himself and won twice, becoming president in 1953 and again in 1970. Not allowing consecutive terms makes it a lot harder for a president to consolidate power. It's a great safeguard. What about the legislature? More from Freedom House, quote, "Elections for the 57-seat unicameral Legislative Assembly occur every 4 years, and deputies are elected by proportional representation. Deputies may not run for 2 consecutive terms, but may run again after skipping a term," end quote. The same safeguard that prevents a president from consolidating power also prevents members of the legislature from making a career out of politics. That's a great safeguard. Don Pepe also created a safeguard that prevents election fraud and has prevented a dictator and safeguarded the people's power to elect their government representatives. What was the safeguard? Have you ever heard of the cédula? According to QCostaRica.com, quote, "To date, there has not been, to my best search on any cases, one case of voter fraud in post-1948 Costa Rica elections, not one case. The year when the elections were deemed fraudulent and annulled by Congress, leading to the Costa Rican Civil War later that year. Why has there been no or almost no voter fraud in Costa Rica's elections in the last 50 years? One word: cédula. In Costa Rica in recent years, the cédula de identidad is a credit card-sized plastic card that includes a photo of the person, a personal identification number, and the card's owner's personal information, complete name, birth date, and others. The cédula is issued to every Costa Rican over the age of 12, end quote. One of the biggest things Jose Pepe Figueres did was to safeguard elections for Costa Rica. He prevented fraud with an ID issued only to citizens, which prevented non-citizens from voting in all elections. More from QCostaRica.com. Quote, foreigners with legal residency in the country are not issued the cédula. Legal residents are issued a DMEX, as the residency card is often referred to. All others use their passport, which, according to my local bank manager, if you can find one, is the only acceptable ID other than the cédula or DMEX. End quote. This is a huge deal. Unlike our system where a driver's license is used as a form of ID in order to register to vote, the cédula proves citizenship. Our system has been purposely corrupted by motor voter laws and states issuing driver's licenses to illegals along with foreigners who are here legally. The cédula eliminates voter fraud because it is the only ID used for voting, and it proves citizenship. Is something like this coming to the United States? Is it part of the plan? There has always been something I couldn't figure out about a particular Q drop. Voter ID laws were described in a particular way that seemed confusing to me. The wording was suggesting something that makes sense but might be hard to implement. Q drop number 4951 of November 12th, 2020. Shall we play a game? Nothing can stop what is coming. NCSWIC. Link cisa.gov/safecom/NCSWIC. Who stepped down today? Forced. Brian S. Ware at CISA.gov. More coming? Why is this relevant? How do you show the public the truth? How do you safeguard U.S. elections post-POTUS? How do you remove foreign interference and corruption and install U.S.-owned voter ID laws and other safeguards? It had to be this way. Sometimes you must walk through the darkness before you see the light. Q. Did you catch that description of voter ID laws? How do you safeguard U.S. elections long after Trump is gone? How do you remove foreign interference and corruption? Q says that they are going to install a U.S.-owned set of voter ID laws. The S is in parentheses because it's going to be one federal law. That's law singular. I believe Q is telling us a federal law is coming that will force all states to use the same citizenship voter ID, which will remove a lot of the voter fraud in our elections. Our elections might be run by the states who have different standards and have introduced different laws in order to corrupt our elections and allow fraud to become entrenched. But that's all going to change. Trump made our elections critical infrastructure for a reason, and the Constitution protects the rights of citizens only when it comes to electing their representatives. When the election fraud is finally exposed, it will open the door to a constitutional amendment that will create a U.S.-owned voter ID law that proves citizenship. All states will be forced to comply because our elections are not only critical infrastructure, but states are also required to follow federal laws in federal elections. I believe this is something that is coming, and it will safeguard future elections and the voting rights of the American people, bringing power back to the people and restoring the Constitution. But that wasn't the only great example that Jose Pepe Figueres set for the world. What else did he do? He nationalized the banking system. This was a massive move to protect the people and give them back the power and control. By nationalizing the banking system, he took that power over their government away from the cabal puppet masters. That made Costa Rica a target in the global financial system. So Don Pepe did something that to this day has prevented the cabal from regaining control of the banking system in Costa Rica. What was it? The public banking option. How do you prevent centralization in the banking system? How do you prevent foreign control? You create banks that are owned and controlled by the people. You create permanent public banking competition. You safeguard the people's savings and make private banks compete with a public bank that focuses on protecting the people's money instead of making profits. What does the banking system look like in Costa Rica? According to the World Business Academy, quote, so says political activist Scott Bidstrup, who writes, for the last decade, I have resided in Costa Rica, where we have had a public option for the last 64 years. There are 29 licensed banks, mutual associations, and credit unions in Costa Rica, of which 4 were established as national publicly owned banks in 1949. They have remained open and in public hands ever since. Despite enormous pressure by the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the U.S. to privatize them along with other public assets, the Costa Ricans have resisted that pressure because the value of a public banking option has become abundantly clear to everyone in this country. During the last 3 decades, countless private banks, mutual associations, a kind of savings and loan, and credit unions have come and gone, and depositors in them have inevitably lost most of the value in their accounts. But the 4 state banks, which compete fiercely with each other, just go on and on because they are stable, and none have failed. In 31 years, most Costa Ricans have moved the bulk of their money into them. Those 4 banks now account for fully 80% of all retail deposits in Costa Rica, and the 25 private institutions share among themselves the rest. End quote. There are only 4 licensed public banks in Costa Rica, and they have all been around for over 64 years. They are owned by the people, not private bankers. Their sole purpose is not to profit off the people's money, but rather to protect it. The people of Costa Rica realize how important this is, which is why 80% of the citizens' deposits are located in these 4 public banks. The people know their money is protected. Obviously, the IMF, the corrupt U.S. government, and the Rothschilds hate this competition and haven't been able to do anything to stop it. Even though the cabal hasn't been able to get rid of the public option banks, they did greatly damage the economy of Costa Rica when the world was forced onto the petrodollar and they went into debt to purchase oil for its economy. The IMF and World Bank forced austerity on them, like they've done to many small countries, in order to keep them trapped in the debt slavery system. But that system is now coming to an end. And even through the hard times, the people's money was protected in those publicly owned banks. It's been one of Don Pepe's greatest safeguards, as when you give the power over the banking system to the people and protect the people's savings, you also ensure that the people retain power over their government. More from the World Business Academy, quote, stability of the local economy is one of the reasons that Costa Rica has never had much difficulty in attracting direct foreign investment and is still the leader in the region in that regard. And it is clear to me that state banking is one of the principal reasons why. The value and importance of a public banking sector to the overall stability and health of an economy has been well proven by the Costa Rican experience. Meanwhile, our neighbors, with their fully privatized banking systems, have de facto encouraged people to keep their money in mattress first national, and as a result, the financial sectors in neighboring countries have not prospered. Here, they have, because most money is kept in banks that carry the full faith and credit of the Republic of Costa Rica. So the money is in the banks and available for lending, while our neighbors' financial systems lurch from crisis to crisis and suffer frequent resulting bank failures. The Costa Rican public system just keeps chugging along. And so does the Costa Rican economy. Is this public banking option part of Trump's plan? Is it one of the safeguards for our future? Did you know there is actually a public bank located in the United States? There's only one. It's a state-owned bank, and I'll bet you'll never guess where it's located. More from World Business Academy, quote, in Costa Rica, publicly owned banks have been available for so long and work so well that people take for granted that any country that knows how to run an economy has a public banking option. Costa Ricans are amazed to hear there is only one public depository bank in the United States, the Bank of North Dakota, and few people have private access to it, end quote. North Dakota owns the only public option bank in the country, and unfortunately, not everyone has access to it. Is that about to change? In my next article, I will reveal the evidence I've found that I believe shows Trump is going to create a public banking option in America, along with some more of the safeguards that are coming that will prevent the bankers from ever controlling our government again. Power is truly coming back to the people. Guys, that's at badlands.substack.com. Joe Lange. Stay tuned for part 2. I just can't freaking wait. Just wow. I think this is going to be my favorite Joe Lange piece. Wow, Joe. I am so glad you reminded me that you published this. This is important stuff. God, isn't this exciting? What a time to be alive. All right, so I'm just going to round out by saying, guys, the vanilla angel paste, I ordered a second batch. It's going to be here on Thursday. We'll start shipping hopefully Thursday. And the reason for that is because the first vanilla batch sold out so stupendously fast that it just didn't feel right for me not to crank out just one more before we finished up the vanilla promotion. So 17 drops, vanilla angel paste, 17 drops of pure organic vanilla essential oil in every bottle. It possesses, in addition to the gorgeous scent, it possesses anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. It's the best lotion the world has ever known. Only food-grade plant oils made by patriots for patriots. Go to angelpaste.com. Use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. And if you order 3 or more boxes or 3 or more bottles, you get free shipping. Angel Paste, your skin will drink it up. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I can't wait for part 2. Hopefully it's soon. I know he's already written it. Maybe I could work out something to do an exclusive first read or something, because that is exciting stuff. And the North Dakota stuff, that's where John's from. That's why we call it Badlands Media. Anyway, I don't know why my camera's got me blurry right now, but whatever. Maybe I need a new webcam. Anyway, everybody, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to check us out at GART3. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/events, or, just go to epicthreads.tv. Check out epicthreads.tv, by the way. I've got merch there for you. You should check it out. There's good stuff there. And we're about to fail over everything to epicthreads.tv just to make it a one-stop shop. It will be able to do international shipping. That's going to rule. So make sure to let your international friends know that that is coming. Epicthreads.tv is going to be this one-stop shop. Don't forget angelpaste.com for your angel paste needs for right now. But anyway, let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.